Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Homicide Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. You know, we're going to look at the Kohberger hearings because we all know the defense has sort of taken a bit of a beating at these hearings. And what do they need in this upcoming trial in August to create doubt? What's going to create doubt in the minds of the jurors? And there's a hell of a lot of things they can do to create doubt. But there's a hell of a lot of circumstantial evidence in this case, all of which, in my humble opinion, is pretty damn powerful when piled up on top of each other. And, you know, you hear all these people talking about, oh, this warrant and this document and that document. Let's talk about the actual evidence. And how much evidence does the prosecution have that is yet to be released? Have we ever seen the contents of Bryan Kohberger's phone? Have we ever seen his text messages? Have we ever seen the sites that he searches? Have we ever seen the photographs in his cell phone other than this most recent one of the selfie? I bet you there's some gems inside his cell phone and some information inside his cell phone that the prosecution is salivating about. So then, folks, a lot of content creators very critical about us real coppers. Why haven't we seen it yet? And is the prosecution holding on to a great deal of this evidence? We're going to look at that. So, folks, hold on to your hats. Hold on to your loved ones. Hold on to your drink. Hold on to your thoughts. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor, Mando Whole Body Deodorant. The thing I like most about Mando Body Deodorant is that it lasts all day and leaves me feeling clean and fresh. It doesn't quit even under the harshest heat and humidity. The fresh feeling keeps me dry and confident. No need to worry about unsightly sweat stains. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% of your starter pack. Use code POLICE in capital letters, POLICE, at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Joining me tonight, I'm so thrilled. We have 2 superstars tonight. Not one, but actually 2. And the first one I'm going to introduce you because it's rank before beauty. And I have Professor Mike Geary, retired NYPD Sergeant, attorney, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike.
Bill, good to see you. Good evening. Thank you for having me on.
Always great to have you. And he was hanging out on the streets of Brooklyn today, picking up the numbers from all the bodegas. So I had to invite him to the show, retired NYPD detective, Phil Grimaldi. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you, Billy. That's some intro you gave me. And you did say rank before beauty. So
that's
yeah,
right.
I heard that.
Look at the beauty there. Anyway, guys, what I wanted to say a lot, there's so much coming, you know, and some people, a lot of content creators would say during these hearings that overall the defense took a beating. And the Judge Hippler, ruled most of the time in favor of the prosecution. And I think one of the reasons that is because the request by the defense was simply outrageous, with no case law to back up what their intentions were in regards to getting a piece of evidence suppressed. Mike, your thoughts, since you're the attorney.
Yeah, Bill, when you see Ann Taylor making some of these arguments about, limiting the use of words and testimony, using, getting rid of the idea that we can discuss the eyebrow, talking about trying to extend a Fourth Amendment privacy protection at a crime scene to Kohberger's DNA searches on to see if a match. All of these things are extraordinary, out of the usual, and Judge Hippler is like, I'm going to play it conservatively. I'm going to go right by precedent and do what we do all the time and deny most of them. Some of them, but look, she's doing a good job as she can. I agree that she should do some of these. I think they have some merit. Most of them don't, and she's getting smacked down on them. But she's trying. She's doing her best. She's doing her job. But yeah, they are far afield of the normal kinds of motions that you would normally see.
100%. Phil, I wanted to play not a game, but I want to ask questions as the defense would ask. And I'm going to ask you as a NYPD retired detective. And this is a good question because the jury would eat this up, right? Why didn't they find blood inside Bryan Kohberger's car, Phil?
Well, right off the bat, Billy, we know that the burden of proof is on the prosecution, and the defense does not have to prove their client innocent. What they need to do is they need to raise doubt. We know that the threshold that has to be met on a criminal case in the United States is proof beyond a reasonable doubt, unanimously by all 12 jurors. So with regard to the question that you just posted to me, why is there no blood found in his car? I think there's several reasons. He could have, and we know that he had he was a criminology student, so he had done research on other criminals. He did research on serial killers. So perhaps he prepared for that by bringing a separate set of clothing, some type of a covering, a mechanic's outfit. I believe in the first search warrant, there was something that was bought at, I believe it was Kmart, some type of a mechanic's outfit, which is something that you jump into and zip. Perhaps he put booties over his feet. We don't know what he had on that night, but there's many reasons why blood wouldn't transfer into the vehicle. And then we also know that the vehicle wasn't tested for an extended period of time, and he was observed cleaning the vehicle. So perhaps the possibility exists that there could have been blood in the car, and he was able to remove it with bleach. Bleach is one of the substances that's used to clean up blood. So there is several ideas in my head on the reason for there not being blood in the vehicle. And I think that's probably one of the biggest contentions that the defense is going to bring up, Bill. I think it's a great question because, the prosecution is going to put out in the opening statement that it's alleged that Kohberger stabbed to death 4 individuals with a very sharp K-bar knife. And you would have to, if you know anything about the human body, you would have to think there was going to be a lot of blood by doing that, by committing that act. So if he leaves,
all right, Phil, so hold off. Let me go to Mike now, and hold that thought.
Okay.
Mike, also, why is no blood inside his house? Another big one, and I think Phil was getting to it, and I didn't want him to go off on this because I wanted to ask you, why didn't he cut himself, or did he cut himself, and did he have enough time to heal his wound? Because he wasn't arrested till December 30th. The attack happened on November 13th. So we saw one video of a car stop, I think it was in the state of Indiana, where it appears that he has a long cut on his right wrist. I don't know if you recall that photo. I don't have it with me right now. I don't have it queued up. So could he have possibly cut himself? And then if he did cut himself, where's the blood? Where's his blood either in the crime scene? Where's his blood in the car? Third part of this, Mike. Undoubtedly, the Moscow police, the FBI, the Iowa State Police, they did a hospital canvass to see if he sought medical care. Do you think he was smart enough not to do that and maybe perhaps treated himself and cleaned it up himself? Your thoughts?
Bill, Phil's right. You think of all the blood. There's going to be blood from, if he is the murderer, there's going to be blood from the victims on him, and the chance of getting cut, even a little bit, is from all that stabbing is pretty high. So he may have, donned the dickie and got all that like scrub stuff and put into a bag and gotten rid of it. He had about 5 weeks to clean that car from November 13th to December 30th. So you're talking that he could have taken that to a car wash and car place and had it detailed inside and out as, bleach, cleaning seats and doing all kinds of stuff. So he probably did that several times. Also, the fact that there's no, so it doesn't surprise me that there may not be blood of the victims or of his anywhere. He's had all that time. And also, from a defense point of view, the reason why there's no blood in the car and no blood in his Washington, University of Washington apartment is he didn't commit the crime. Someone else committed the crime, so there wouldn't be any blood there.
Exactly.
And then, you got 6 weeks to heal. He's a young man. He's 30 years old. You heal fairly quickly when you're that age. And depending on the type of injury, it might have healed up fairly quickly. And you're right. If he was really injured, like maybe the knife slipped, and if he cut himself in like his forearm or near his vein on his wrist, he would have probably definitely gotten to seek some sort of help somewhere. But the fact is, there probably is no record as far as we know. So that would indicate that whatever cuts he might have gotten were very minor. But yeah, it's sad that there's no blood to match, the victims from his car. But the thing is, he had about 5 to 6 weeks head start on everybody.
One of the things that Phil mentioned also, and those big suits that you wear, that carpenters wear, and covers virtually your whole body. Perhaps he had those booties on covering his shoes, although there was a blood foot imprint left that was brought up with a substance called amino black, was able to recover that. So that would sort of say maybe he didn't wear booties, but maybe that isn't his footprint.
Right.
There's another thing, right? So the theory is, of course, if he is the murderer and if he did these stabbings, he was well planned. Perhaps he wore those heavy duty gloves where no matter what, you cannot cut yourself because they're covering your hands. You see guys that fillet fish wear them so that they don't, when the knife slips, they don't cut their hand. Same thing with the hilt. The hilt on a knife like this, if it gets bloody, the knife is going to slip. As you can see, this is the hilt about the halfway point of the knife, which prevents your hand from sliding down onto the blade, but does it really? He was probably wearing some kind of gloves. Now, Phil, the $1 million question, of course, is the touch DNA on the knife sheath. We see the sheath under there, and it was on the button. So many people are making light of that, saying, oh, it's touch DNA. That doesn't mean anything, blah, 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 blah. Oh, it was planted. It was this, it was that. First of all, the DNA came back before they knew who their suspect was. So how could they have planted it?
Exactly, Bill. You could say touch DNA or actual DNA. It's DNA. It's Bryan Kohberger's, and it was found at the crime scene. I mean, the defense can only say one thing, in my opinion. Yeah, it's there. It was left at the crime scene. The only thing I can think of is that it was purposely left there. That maybe they're going to try and say, well, someone else planted it, and it just happened to have Bryan Kohberger's DNA on it. Now, what Mike said is exactly where I was going. If you're talking about the blood, that's going to be one of their contentions. There's no blood in his car. There's no blood in his house. There's no blood anywhere because he didn't do it. And again, this piece of DNA evidence, which I think is probably going to be the most powerful piece of evidence in this case. And I just want to say right from the jump, I do believe that this is a very powerful case, a very strong case. And I think that it's very highly unlikely that the police have arrested the wrong suspect in this case. And I do believe, in my opinion, in my heart, that there probably will be a conviction. We know that there's a ton of evidence and there's other stuff that we don't know about. So with that said, the DNA on the sheet is probably going to be one of the most critical and most powerful pieces of evidence. And that's evidence. That's not circumstantial evidence. That's evidence.
Well, I think that Professor Mike would disagree with you. He would define that as circumstantial evidence, wouldn't you, Mike?
From the way I view circumstantial evidence, I'd say it is circumstantial evidence because I always define direct evidence as a suspect's own admissions, video of the actual crime being committed, or an eyewitness. So that's my version of it.
Mike, what do you think about a fingerprint? Same thing?
Same thing. Same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
Mike, I want to play this from CBS News. This gives a little bit of insight into the rules of evidence.
Final ground rules are being set for the University of Idaho murders trial. Bryan Kohberger is accused of killing 4 students in November of 2022. Prosecutors and attorneys are arguing over what evidence can be used in that trial. CBS News correspondent Jonathan Bigliotti joins us now to discuss yesterday's hearing. So, Jonathan, what rules about evidence are prosecutors and attorneys hoping to set?
Yeah, and good morning to you, Errol. The hearing really setting the tone for this trial. The judge having to weigh 25 motions to suppress evidence. What evidence can and cannot be introduced before a jury, and what language can and cannot be used in that courtroom. To that point, the judge siding with the defense, saying that Bryan Kohberger cannot be described as a murderer or a sociopath or psychopath. Then came the debate over Amazon data, the state saying that Amazon data shows that Bryan Kohberger purchased a K-bar knife, what they believe to be the weapon that was used to carry out these murders. The judge ultimately siding with the state, saying that that evidence will be introduced before the jury. I think one of the biggest points came when the defense tried to argue against evidence and key testimony from one of the surviving roommates who described seeing the suspect wearing a mask and bushy eyebrows. The judge said that he would need to take some more time before making a ruling on that, Errol.
And Jonathan, I know that you had the chance to sit down with the father of one of the victims, that victim, Kaylee Gonsalves. What did he say about the upcoming trial?
Yeah, Steve Gonsalves, her father, and Christy Gonsalves, the mother. We spoke with them right after the hearing. As you can imagine, it's been a very difficult road for them, 2.5 years now of dealing with this case, trying to find justice for their daughter. They are most concerned about preparing themselves for what they will see at this trial. They're specifically concerned about all of the photos and the videos coming out of the crime scene. What the judge described as horrific images, the defense actually tried to exclude some of those photos. The judge saying, as awful as they are, they need to be shown. I want you to take a listen to what Steve said, just coming out of how difficult the hearing itself was.
It's a hard thing to even put yourself in there because you see all these people there to protect him, and you know no one was there to protect your daughter.
So, obviously, the evidence in this case, as Matt Murphy said, that great LA County District Attorney, Assistant District Attorney, the evidence in this case is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And when I hear other content creators talking about, oh, this, oh, that, they don't know what they're talking about, and they always refer always to the documentation, the search warrant, the return search warrant. Guess what? The prosecution hasn't returned all the evidence. Has a single person out there saw the contents of Bryan Kohberger's cell phone? Can anyone answer that? No one has. That is a plethora. I pulled that word out of my college years. That is a plethora of information that no one has seen. Other question, how do we know? Because we haven't seen his cell phone information, that there was no connection with any of the victims, no prior connection. Could there be text messages? Could there be a video? Could there be a picture? We don't know. And the defense has the prosecution has yet to release the contents of his cell phone. Professor Mike.
Yeah, Bill, you got that. You've got the cell phone. You've got the fact that Kaylee Gonsalves, I think it was Kaylee who believed that she was stalked earlier, before a couple of weeks before this happened. You've got also the contents of what was returned in the search warrant Bryan Kohberger's home in the apartment and graduate apartment in University of Washington. So you have a lot of stuff that's out there that we haven't found out about yet. And the reason why we haven't found out about it yet is because Ann Taylor has yet to make a motion to suppress it. But believe me, it's there. And we'll find out about it sooner or later. And the later will be actually at the trial. But the more pretrial motions she puts in to try and suppress evidence, the more the prosecution will reveal publicly all the evidence that they do have.
You know, Mike Schmitty, thank you for the $5 super sticker. She has a question for you. Professor Mike, since the judge determined they should avoid using the term touch DNA, what other term would or could be used?
I'm not being a scientist. I'm not sure. I would just think that they're just going to say trace DNA or something like that. A more scientific term, perhaps. I'm not sure, but they're going to be using that term DNA.
DNA is going to be in there for sure.
What's that?
DNA is going to be in there for sure.
Yeah,
the word
absolutely.
DNA, because that's what the heading of the evidence is. It's DNA.
Absolutely.
So whether
So
it be touch, you know.
I'm not sure what the judge will want to call it. Let them call it, but it's going to be a clinical term that everybody could agree on.
You know, a big finding in the hearings also is the things that Bryan Kohberger had ordered off of Amazon. And that is circumstantial evidence. However, it connects the dots. It connects the dots of evidence. Let me just play a little bit of this from Crime Fix.
No volume, Bill.
Yeah.
Still no volume.
So the judge just said there, like they're trying to say that, you know, she wants this evidence suppressed. Mike, how could they do that?
Bill, you talking about the DNA evidence, Billy?
No,
There was no volume on that video,
Yeah,
Billy.
the volume wasn't on.
We didn't hear any
video.
volume at
Oh,
all.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I could hear it loud and clear.
Yeah, it didn't come over.
Okay. You're talking about the search history, the Amazon search history.
Yes.
That's going to come in, and because he had access to that account, maybe he shared it with someone else, and they could make that, the defense could make that argument, but it's not going to be suppressed. And the judge has told Ann Taylor that there's going to be somebody from Amazon talking about the order and talking about the kind of account it is, and then she will be left with trying to do the best she can on cross-examination. But it's coming in because he had access to that account. He might have been more than one person, but he had access to it. And what was ordered about 8 months before the homicides was the kind of knife that the medical examiner determined would be the kind of knife that left those sorts of horrific stab wounds on those four young people in 1122 King Road.
Well, there will be extensive testimony from the medical examiner, the person that actually conducted the autopsy, and to match up the K-bar knife that you see up on the screen with the type of wounds that was suffered by the victims. And that's going to be very powerful evidence too. Although the knife was never recovered, it makes sense that a sheath that matches up to this knife was recovered in the bed of Madison Mogan underneath her body or alongside her body. So all of that is quite impressive evidence.
Bryan Christopher Kohberger on a warrant for murder of Ethan Zena Madison and Kaylee.
He was stalking them. He was hunting them.
You could tell there was something off about him.
A quadruple homicide in Moscow, Idaho. It's just unheard of.
This is our home. This is our university. This is our community.
These murders have shaken our community, and no arrest will ever bring back these young students.
This was a violation of everything.
Let's talk about the Idaho student murders case now. It's what's trending in true crime. Bryan Kohberger is the man charged with those fatal stabbings, and he was back in court on Wednesday. Both sides arguing what's called those motions in limine, the motions ahead of the trial. They really set the stage for everything, and that trial market calendar is set to begin on August 11th. There were over 20 different motions taken up by the court. We want to talk about some of the key motions. So we've pulled them out here. One of them coming up has to do with Bryan Kohberger's autism diagnosis.
I want to talk about that too, because there is a car stop with Bryan Kohberger. I believe it was in October of 2022, which would have been about a month before these murders, where he's pulled over by Washington State campus police. And he's very articulate. He's very inquisitive. He's asking all types of questions. And that doesn't match up, Mike, with autism spectrum disorder, does it?
Bill, yeah, he is very, very articulate. He's interacting, very professionally and in a very ordinary manner that anyone else would. He's not showing any signs of any sort of issues communicating, understanding, speaking, getting to the point, understanding what the female officer saying in return. He's actually bantering a little bit, saying that he doesn't know about the crosswalks because where he comes from in rural Pennsylvania, they don't have the crosswalks like they have there. He wasn't. And she told him, she actually cited, if you want to know all about the traffic laws in the state here now that you're here, on campus, you just go to like WashingtonStateLaws.com or whatever. And she's explaining it to him. This is not like, she's talking to a 3-year-old and asking him if he wants ice cream. No, this person that she spoke to was a very articulate, bright young man who's in graduate school at the University of Washington, no different from a lot of other people.
Let's take a look at the car stop. Listen to it.
Place your vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know laws vary state to state, but there is a law in Washington for blocking an intersection like that, proceeding through when when you're just stalling. I forget the actual verbiage. I can find it for you, but it's like stalling, blocking an intersection.
Okay. I'm just curious about the law. I don't mean to.
Oh no, yeah, I can find it for you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 1 second. That looks good on a Hyundai. I don't see Pennsylvania registration like at all. Okay, let's see. Expires November 22nd or 2022. Okay. And
one of those is actually.
Yeah. Okay, that looks good. I'll hand that back to you. I'm just gonna go check your info. I'll try to find that RCW, the law for you, and I'll be right back.
Thank you.
All right.
Now, in that short interaction, does he appear to be inarticulate? Does he appear not to know what's going on? Let me see if I can go back to their interaction.
Okay, so I found it. So I don't know what in Pennsylvania where you go to find laws, but in Washington it's called the Revised Code of Washington. So I'll try to turn my brightness up, but it's just called an RCW. So it's RCW 46.61.202. So it's no driver shall enter an intersection unless there is significant space on the other side of the intersection. To accommodate the vehicle, he is operating without obstructing the passage of other vehicles, despite any traffic control signal indications to proceed. So you had a green light, so you're thinking you can go, but you're blocking the intersection. Yeah. So that's if you're ever curious in any laws in Washington, just Revised Code of Washington. So I'm not writing a ticket or anything like that today. I understand you're from Pennsylvania, but in the future, don't proceed through the intersection. You can't get stopped for that alone unless you can clearly just clear it right away.
Okay.
So
that basically, I understand.
You're just supposed to wait behind the white line. Drivers do it all the time. But
it never even occurred to me that that was actually something wrong.
Yeah.
Well, except for the fact that I was blocking the crosswalk, which is what
Yeah.
I went through.
And states vary a lot from laws. Like Pennsylvania might not even have that law, but in Washington we do.
My whole point with showing this is that he's quite articulate and he's quite reasonable, and he's reasoning with the officer to the point where she doesn't even give him a ticket, does she? Phil.
Absolutely, Billy. There's a couple of points I wanted to make with regard to this. Number one, I'm the prosecutor. I'm going to find a doctor that diagnosed him with this somewhere in the spectrum of autism, bring that person onto the stand and ask them questions about the diagnosis. Where does he fall into that spectrum? He has a driver's license. I know from family history, a relative that has it. Some of them will never attain a driver's license. He has a driver's license, fairly articulate. That doesn't mean he doesn't have it. However, he's also a PhD student. I would ask the doctor that diagnosed him, is it possible for a person that's diagnosed under your condition, your diagnosis of autism, can a person like that attain a driver's license? Can a person like that be a PhD student? I would like to see what that doctor has to say. So that can be, blown out by the prosecution by bringing that doctor in and putting, sort of throwing water on it. If they're going to, say, well, he's autistic, he couldn't possibly have committed these crimes because he has autism. I don't think that falls into line here. I mean, is it possible he has a very low on the spectrum of autism? I guess that's possible, but that doctor is going to be key. I want to have that doctor on the stand and see what he has to say about it. And then you could also bring a rebuttal doctor, a doctor that says, no, that doctor's not correct. He doesn't have autism. There would have to be certain criteria met or certain thresholds that have to be met to say that this person is diagnosed with autism. So I'm not buying that so much.
Okay. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Hit that like button. Share us with your friends and your family. And if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels, and we have a YouTube channel membership with count them 5 different levels. We'd appreciate sharing us with your friends and your family. Hit that like button so we can hit that algorithm. So clearly, Professor Mike, the defense does not want that car stop into evidence. However, clearly the prosecution does. How powerful is that car stop evidence, Mike?
Bill, it does really damage the defense because they keep talking about the fact that he's awkward, his movements, his ability to coordinate his legs, his spatial orientation. They had mentioned a whole bunch of things. Remember, he lived in Pennsylvania. He drove that car across the country. That's probably, and I think he probably did it by himself. That's probably like a 4-day trip, all by himself, driving along, Route 80, Route 90 west and going all the way out to the West Coast. So therefore, he has eye-hand coordination. He can move, he could walk, he could talk, he could drive a car. There's really nothing to their assertion that he's impaired in any mental health capacity or physical health capacity. So just that alone, and showing how well he could speak to the officer and reason with the officer, shows that there's nothing wrong with this guy.
Mama Morris from the chat, I'm going to read your comments. Autism doesn't equal incompetence to get a license or a PhD. Not saying he might not have committed these crimes. If he's high functioning, he'll know right from wrong. Phil, comments?
Yeah, she just kind of answered it. He could be high functioning. He's low on the spectrum with regard to disability. He could have a driver's license. He could function. He could be a PhD student. But I think that if we do make those assertions, we can also throw in there he could have the ability to slaughter 4 people and be the murderer in this case. So whatever the defense is trying to put forward, I don't think they're going to be able to say he couldn't have done this based on the fact that he's been diagnosed with autism. No, that's a very, very weak assertion, in my opinion. And I think that comment that she put up sort of seals it. Yes, you can be diagnosed as a person with autism, but be very low on the spectrum and be functional and be productive and be able to Maybe you're even brighter than most normal people because of the autism. I don't know, but whatever it is, he was a PhD student. He's very articulate in that car stop. He was articulate when he was a teacher's aide. He was doing college classes. So I don't think there was any doubt that he was functional, living on his own. His parents, mommy and daddy were, in several states away. So I think that the assertion that he was disabled with autism, very weak.
Liminal from the chat, the defense doesn't have to prove anything.
Correct.
You're 100% correct.
Correct.
The defense, all they have to do is create doubt. The prosecution has to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. BARD, that's the acronym, BARD, beyond a reasonable doubt. And Liminal, you're 1,000% correct. The defense doesn't have to prove anything. But what is their responsibility? There's another thing the defense is bringing up that the judge jumped at and said, no way. Alternate defendant, or that there are two defendants in this case. You want to come up with that? You want to bring that in? Who is he? Do you have him? Do you have an alibi witness? Do you have the name of an alternate suspect? Mike, explain this since you're the lawyer.
Okay. If you want under Idaho law, if you want to bring in an alibi, it has to be a person, a living, breathing human being that you could bring into court in the defense's case in chief and say, I know Bryan Kohberger, where he was that day. We're sitting at a bar 50 miles away, having drinks. We're closing up the bar. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever. It's got to be a real live, breathing person who can vouch for that defendant's whereabouts at that particular time. It just can't be. Our alibi will be based on how well we do cross-examining prosecution witnesses. No, that is not an alibi. An alibi is not, I'm driving around. That's not considered an alibi. That's a story that he has to testify to in his case in chief. So alibi has to be a living, breathing human being. If you don't have a name of a living, breathing human being, it's not, quote unquote, an alibi under Idaho law. When it comes to alternate theory, like a possible alternate killer, in this case, again, Judge Hippler said, if you're going to bring that up, you better, because on the tip book, you said that there's a whole bunch of people who haven't been investigated, and you want to bring up that alternate theory. Hippler said, you got to give a name. Pick out one of those names. You got to name names. But the problem is, if you do that, you are subjecting yourself to a defamation lawsuit. So you have to name a name. You just can't say, oh, there's a whole bunch of people that they never looked at. That's my alternate killer theory. No, it's got to be a name. And if you're not willing to do that, you're not going to be able to bring it up under Idaho law. You will be silenced.
The other thing, Schmitty from the chat, are they going to call his family to the stand to say under oath that they each did not purchase the knife? Interesting, right?
Yeah.
First of all, Schmitty, one of the things, if certain family members were interviewed during this investigation and locked into a statement, that's their statement. They can't now change their statement when they get on the stand and say, oh, do you remember more clearly now, 2.5 years after this incident, than you did the day that you were interviewed? And that will ruin the credibility of a witness if they say, oh, yes, I think what I'm saying today is the truth, and what I said a month after it or 2 months after it is false. I didn't remember it clearly back then. Is that believable, Phil?
I think that's most certainly not. We always talk about when we do an interview, we want to get right out there, whether it be a kidnapping case or a murder case. And I always use the term, I want to lock somebody into a story. I want to do a hard interview. I want to get a lot of details for that specific reason. So that way, 2 years down the line, when the trial comes up, they can't say, well, I didn't. No, this is what you said the days after, within weeks, let's say. This is what you said right after the incident happened. Now you're changing your story. So you're going to knock their credibility. And I think the jury, and in most cases, most people would think what they said during an extensive interview, a hard interview, as I've put it many times, that's probably going to be the most believable part of it. And Bill, you brought up the part about, beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the whole thing. The defense just has to create some type of doubt. And in summation, they'll point out the doubts that they created, and then the jury will get it. And it'll be up to the jury to decide, is this case 100% beyond the reasonable doubt? And don't forget, there's a higher expectation here because this could be a death penalty case. So again, with all of that said, a lot of stuff going on here. I just think that you have to weigh out the differences between what the prosecution is going to say and what the defense is going to say. Right now, the defense is not having such an easy time, especially with this judge getting things knocked out or knocking the evidence, so to speak, or impeaching it.
But I think this judge is being fair, but he's
absolutely
ruling on the law. He's not just look. I felt Judge John Judge, the initial judge with this case, was bending over backwards for the defense, and he couldn't get rid of this case quickly enough. When they said we want to change of venue, oh, you got it. Let me move it, because then I won't have to be on it anymore. I don't think he wanted this case. Like it was the bubonic plague. He wanted to get rid of this case, Mike.
Yeah, he was very, very sympathetic, if I guess is a proper term, regarding the defense motions, and especially the change of venue. He probably was, going, yeah, thank goodness, because this is a nightmare case. And but you need somebody like Judge Hippler, who seems to be a lot tougher personality, and ruling on the evidence. But John Judge, by being generous to Ann Taylor, he deprived her, by granting her motions early on, he deprived her of the ability to make an appeal based on a denial of those motions. Here, Hippler is denying all of her motions to suppress the evidence, and each and every one of them, if there is a conviction, will be appealed. Anything that he's denied can be appealed, but it'll be appealed while if there's a conviction, while Kohberger is in prison. But he's a much tougher personality, definitely.
100%. Let me go back to court TV with this.
And if he is convicted, whether or not it could be used as a mitigating factor as to whether he should receive capital punishment. Let's talk about the killer's bushy eyebrows. We know that one of the surviving housemates said she saw the man wearing dark clothing, athletic build, wearing that dark mask, but saw the bushy eyebrows. Well, the defense doesn't want that coming in. The judge took the arguments under advisement. We'll see what he rules later. But we want to talk about that because we know that's really key in this description, right? We know that this surviving housemate didn't make a direct identification of Bryan Kohberger. He's just the accused. So is it likely the judge is going to exclude her descriptor of the bushy eyebrows? Let's bring in attorney Dave Ehrenberg now.
Well, we don't need that. Will, Mike, we have our own attorney here.
That's right.
Yeah.
Will the judge throw out, we know Dylan Mortensen, the housemate, who was drunk, admittedly drunk, never made an out-and-out identification saying, oh, that's Bryan Kohberger, said the male I saw was about 5'10". He had bushy eyebrows and athletic build. Described a not muscular, thin, athletic build. And she drew this balaclava. And guess what? For all people that don't believe in circumstantial evidence, he ordered a balaclava on his Amazon account. Isn't that what we want to see, Phil, when we see evidence and we connect the dots like that?
100%, and goes back to the hard interview. She described the bushy eyebrows and she drew I don't know how you say it, a baklava? Balaclava. So, I mean, that's just, what did you mean by that? And she draws it. And then we find out that he purchased one and he owned one. So, and listen, the defense can easily say, well, there's hundreds of those, there's thousands of those, whatever it is. And other people have bushy eyes. He's not the only one. But she described a person with bushy eyebrows being in the house right after the murders. And we know for a fact from his pictures, he has bushy eyebrows. So again, circumstantial, but believable. It's believable.
And this selfie taken on the morning of the murders, would there be anyone in the chat, anyone watching this show that would deny that Bryan Kohberger has bushy eyebrows? Is there anyone? Is there anyone? Please raise your hand. Come forward.
Yeah, really. I mean, when you look at that picture, that really gives me the creeps, because we know that's just within hours of the murders. And if he is in fact the killer, which we all believe he is, to do such a thing like that after you just slaughtered 4 people just really shows you the mental state and gives you a profile of Bryan Kohberger. You know, I don't know, just really sticks in my craw, that picture.
After all, from the chat, Sergeant Bill sounds right. Too many circumstances are just fitting pieces of a puzzle.
Bill
And
said that many times. You've said that many times.
Circumstantial evidence for which inferences are drawn. Can we draw inferences from connecting these pieces of circumstantial evidence? Professor Mike?
The answer is yes, you can. We know he had a white Hyundai Elantra. We know it had only one license plate, and that's what we see in some of the surveillance video. We know he had a balaclava, and we know he has bushy eyebrows, although somebody might not think they're bushy, but that's something the jury members themselves will have to discuss. But that testimony will come in as her present sense impression as she was talking to the police and remembering what she saw. Whether she was drunk or not, the fact is she was pretty darn accurate, because his DNA, somebody who's about 6 feet tall, 180 pounds, thin build, not very muscular, with bushy eyebrows, is sitting at the defense table and being accused of these crimes. All of this stuff, all little tidbits are coming in, and you follow the breadcrumbs to the logical conclusion. And the conclusion that the prosecution is hoping the jury makes is that, yes, indeed, all these little things prove that he killed 4 people.
Need some Z's. There is no current proof that picture was taken hours after the murder. There was no metadata submitted that the public is aware of. Need some Z's. You are 100% wrong.
Absolutely.
That picture was taken from his cell phone. It is time-stamped.
I think it's time-stamped at like 11 a.m. or something, right, Bill?
Yes, 10:30.
Okay.
On 11/13/2022. So you're not correct with that. And so that is damning evidence. And I'm sorry to come down on you like that. I don't mean to come down on you, but it absolutely was time-stamped. It was from his cell phone, date-stamped. So it is such a really important piece of evidence.
We also know that he returned to the scene at around 9-ish. His cell phone takes him back to the location. And, you know, it's kind of, the defense might contend, say, you know, wouldn't it be so odd for a person to kill somebody and then return to the scene? Well, I think that he wanted to see if there was any kind of excitement going on, police, you know, roped off areas, things of that nature, sort of like what a person who lights fires in arson would do. They go back to the scene to relive the, you know, the excitement of the fire. And we believe that, you know, in our opinions, that Bryan Kohberger was probably going to be a serial killer. And we know that that's one of the traits of the serial killers. They want to relive the action. So the fact that he took that picture at 11 o'clock and the fact that he was at the location a little after 9 that morning, you know, 4 or 5 hours after the murder, pretty damning in my opinion.
Bird Dog from the chat. A lot of people have a balaclava and a K-bar, but the sheath had his DNA on it. Voila. Voila. Yes. That connects. That is the piece de resistance, is that, yeah, a lot of people have a K-bar knife and a balaclava, but they don't have the sheath with their DNA on it lying next to a homicide victim. Mike.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it terrible that all of these things are pieces of the puzzle that, you know, Bryan Kohberger has in his possession or he has access to? The Hyundai, the balaclava, the knife, the location. He's only a few miles away. So, and the license plates being, you know, what they are. All these little things are adding up. It's terribly inconvenient for him that of all the people in the world whose DNA, 8 billion people, all the people's DNA, he is the only one who has DNA on that knife sheath. If he is innocent, I feel really sad for him, because it seems rather strange that his DNA would be on that knife sheath if he is actually an innocent person who was actually out driving around that night looking at the stars.
Yeah, sure.
You know, Kitty Cat, the documents state that the police showed her a picture of Bryan. That's when they told her he has bushy eyebrows. Is that who you saw? She never picked out him from a lineup of other people. Kitty Cat, that's totally false.
Not wrong.
Because,
I mean, wrong.
Because she was interviewed the morning. They didn't even know about Bryan Kohberger till, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks later, when they identified the state of Washington security, Washington State University, identified the Hyundai Elantra. And they came back that it was registered to one Bryan Kohberger. And even at that point, I don't believe they had probable cause. They didn't pull the trigger on the probable cause till what, Mike?
The DNA. They got the DNA.
Till the DNA. I would have said that the Hyundai Elantra coming back to him based on all of his movements came awfully close to giving them probable cause just with that. But they didn't jump at it. They waited till they had more evidence, which is a sign of professionalism. Bill.
Absolutely, Billy. And with regard to the touch DNA, I just wanted to piggyback what Mike said earlier. You know, DNA comes from saliva, blood, hair, different things of that nature. You can touch an object and leave your DNA on it. And that's the DNA that we're talking about. It's still DNA. It doesn't mean that it's not Bryan Kohberger's DNA. It's just how it was left behind. Years ago, touch DNA, there was no such thing. They've developed DNA technologies now where you can touch an object and you actually leave some of your cells on that object. Now, the button on the snap would be almost the perfect object for that DNA collection to be, or the DNA to be left for collection by crime scene investigators. So that was very, very important. And I don't know how the judge is going to say you can't use the term touch DNA. Then they're going to just use the word DNA or whatever they're going to use, but it's actually his DNA. One other quick point. With regard to the K-bar knife, as Billy touched on earlier, medical examiner does examination of the body. They're going to examine those wounds on those victims' bodies, and they're going to say that they believe that the wounds were made by a consistent weapon like a K-bar knife. The wounds patterns will be consistent, as opposed to, let's say, a serrated edge knife. That's a smooth edge knife, and it may have two sides to it. So they will discuss how they believe that the knife patterns, the wound patterns, are consistent with that of a K-bar knife. Now, we don't have the murder weapon, but we have, that's pretty strong evidence from a medical examiner to say the wounds that were inflicted on these 4 victims are consistent with that of a K-bar knife.
100%. Tanya, the sheath did not kill anyone. Tanya, you're missing the whole point then if you just even made that statement. The sheath, of course, but the sheath had the DNA of the alleged killer on it. And we spoke about another connection to the sheath. It was ordered on Bryan Kohberger's account on Amazon. You're starting to see the circumstantial evidence, the dots connected. I can't make it any clearer than that.
Billy, there's more to it. In the haste of killing 4 people, he drops the sheet. He purchased the sheet, and his DNA is on the sheet. So it's we know. I mean, that was kind of like a silly statement. We know the sheet didn't kill anyone. Of course not. But you're building a case here. You have DNA evidence on a piece of evidence that was left behind, the knife sheet. We know that the wounds are consistent with a K-bar knife, and he purchased a K-bar knife with a sheet and a stone. So you have the whole picture there to me. It's like a neat wrap bundle right there. So to make that statement really is inconsistent.
Erica Olson, key that the public is aware of. There has been a gag order. Facts are now coming out slowly as defense makes motions and puts them on public record. I'm sure we'll see more as time goes on. Very articulate, Erica, and totally agree with you. You know, another thing that the Kitty Cat, I'm going to read yours also. Even the expert that's trying to identify the car through the videos cannot identify that Elantra as what they want it to be. Only one time does the Elantra fit the description of Bryan's car. Kitty Cat, you know, identifying a vehicle from video
difficult.
It's very, very difficult. Even identifying the exact make and model. It's not like TV where you press the easy button. It's not like TV where the video is so outstanding you can even read the license plate. One of the things we know, though, is that Bryan Kohberger's Hyundai Elantra had one license plate. And the vehicle, in this case, seen on the course of travel, had one license plate. So that's pretty powerful. That Hyundai Elantra was registered to one Bryan Kohberger from Washington State University. And that Hyundai Elantra took a path. Here we have it right here. It was caught on video cameras right around 1122 King Road. You see all those different times. 3:30 a.m., 3:39 a.m., 3:56 a.m., 4:05 a.m., 4:07 a.m. That's the car. And then at about 4, I don't have the exact time, I believe it was about 4:18 or 4:22, speeding away from the scene. Circumstantial evidence. Professor Mike?
Yeah, Bill, it certainly is. And remember, although they couldn't identify the Hyundai the exact year, they gave a range, because a lot of car companies, they don't change the models every single year. They'll go with similar light patterns and headlight patterns, door patterns and chrome patterns and things like that. So therefore, they may make pretty much an identical car over the course of a number of years. And the FBI came up with an idea that it was like a 2011 to 2016. They couldn't be any more accurate and precise, but they came up with something very similar to that several different times, that they got more and more information. So therefore, the fact that they couldn't maybe identify it as a 2014 Hyundai or whatever the type of car that Bryan has, to me, it's still excellent circumstantial evidence, because it is a white Hyundai, out-of-state plates, registered to Bryan Kohberger, seen in that area numerous times, in that numerous timestamps in that morning, and driving away at a high rate of speed. And despite all of the poor quality of the video that they got, they did a pretty darn good job. And so when they finally came up with the answer at the end, that is Bryan Kohberger, they figured out what year his car was when they started looking into, him as a possible car owner with a white Hyundai. They were very accurate. It just proved how accurate they were from the very beginning.
Another thing that the defense is trying to get thrown out is this little 911 call that I'll play for you.
Something is happening. Something's happening in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
What is the rest of the address?
Oh, Kings Road.
Okay. And is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right?
I'll talk to you guys. We live at the White, so we're next to them.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
And what's the phone number that you're calling from?
What's your phone number?
And tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates has passed out, and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up.
Okay.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah.
And are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around.
Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?
What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now?
I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m.
Okay, I need to know what's going on right now if someone is passed out. Can you find that out?
Yeah, I'll come. Come on, but we gotta go check. But we have to. What's wrong? She's not waking up.
Okay, one moment. I'm getting help started that way.
So, disturbing call. Absolutely disturbing. Very emotional. Mike, why does the defense not want that in there?
Bill A is very sympathetic. It shows that there was the girls woke up and you connected to the text messaging about texting and saying, and Zaina's not answering and Madison's not answering, Kaylee's not answering. And so they were frightened. And so they ran down, DM ran down to the first floor to be with her roommate. They probably locked the door. They wake up and they see that Kaylee is, I think it's Zaina, I think it is, they ran into first. And she's on the floor and she's not responding, and she may be cold to the touch. These are young girls, they are scared out of their minds. They don't know what to do. They call 911. It's a heartfelt, very sympathetic. They're crying. They're upset. They're beyond their ability to really see what they're seeing, to understand what they're seeing. And they talk about, we saw someone here, earlier in the night. And then she's like, and the dispatcher brings it back to what's going on today. But it shows the emotion and the moment that they realize, holy crap, something is wrong. And it's really sympathetic to the prosecution and the prosecution's witnesses.
Well, I think, Mike, one of the things is that the defense really wants to take a piece out of Dylan Mortensen.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because it's hard to explain that no one called the police till 8 hours after this occurred. That is tough to explain, Phil. What do you think?
Well, I think that initially I felt that way. You felt that way. We all felt that. Why was there a delay of 8 hours before the police were called? But when you take it into context and you understand these are college kids in a frat house, a Saturday night, there's drinking going on. So she saw someone, maybe it wasn't so unusual to see a person in the house that didn't live there. Someone brought a guest in, but she was pretty clear on it that now it clicked. Something's wrong with my roommate. She's not responding. Maybe she's dead, and there was somebody in the house. It's all coming together at this point. And I don't think it's so unbelievable that no one found the dead bodies or no one called the police for 8 hours when you hear the context now. Initially, I was skeptical of that. We all were. I mean, how could 4 people be slaughtered in a house where other people are home, other people are living there, and no one knew about it? No one called the police. What you right away, you're thinking cover up. But when you take it in context of what it was, probably everybody was drinking that night, or who was falling asleep, who fell out. Some of the noises were heard. Maybe they just thought it was an argument or whatever, or just people talking loudly. And, now knowing what we know, you can understand it. And it's quite logical to me at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. There is a lot of areas for the defense to create doubt. There absolutely is.
100%.
But a thorough, articulate, organized prosecutor, I think, can explain away on cross-examination of the witnesses or his initial examination, lay down the platform for Dylan Mortensen to tell her story and be believed. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, Bill. Remember, she at the time she was like Dylan's like 20 years old. Now she's 23. She's still a young girl. She's going to be on the witness stand, and the prosecution will play that excerpts of it. The judge may have to limit all of that and say we'll play certain pieces of it, but the jury will hear frightened people in a house crying and begging for help. Frightened out of their minds. They'll see her on the witness stand talking about the context. What did she actually see that day physically with her own 2 eyes? Why did she call? What was going on? What happened before she called? What happened after she called when they were waiting for the police and the ambulance? Ann Taylor has to do her thing. We've all been beaten up and down, torn to shreds by a good defense attorney. And Ann Taylor is a good defense attorney. She's going to shred Dylan Mortensen. But at the end of Dylan's testimony, she gets off the stand, it won't matter at all how good a job Ann Taylor does, because all she'll have done is beat up a young girl. And the jury is going to look at Dylan and say, there's a young girl who woke up to a horrific crime scene, and the sympathy will all be with her. So Ann Taylor will do her job, and she'll do it well. But I don't think it'll matter at all after the jury hears that 9/11 tape.
Well said. Blondie 1025, thank you for the $9.99 super sticker. I agree with Phil. I would think the judge will allow the 911 call. You know, Blondie, I'm going to have to agree with you. I think he's.
Why
gonna,
wouldn't he? That's what I
Yeah.
don't understand.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he? You know, it's
because the defense wants it thrown out.
I know they want it thrown out, but if I'm on the jury, did anybody call the police? Why aren't we hearing the 911 call? Because you see it on TV a lot. So that would be something that would be, you know, the jury is going to be looking for. And Mike's right. It's going to show sympathy towards the victims, towards the witness. She's going to wind up, one of them may become a witness in the case. But the amount of pressure or the amount of cross-examination that they do on Dylan Mortensen, it could go both ways, because she's going to be telling the truth. She's going to say, this is what happened. I saw a guy with bushy eyebrows at 4:00 in the morning. Why didn't you call the police? She's going to give whatever reason it was. I fell asleep. I was drunk, whatever. There was people in that house previously, that didn't live there. And I just thought it was a guest. Whatever the thing is going to be, I think it's going to be negative for the defense attorney to really beat up on her. I think that, she's going to have to go at it. There's no question about that. She's going to try and knock her testimony and create doubt 100%. But I think if Dylan Mortensen stays strong and just sticks to the truth and tells the story the way it happened, that's going to be irrefutable, in my opinion, as long as, the defense attorney doesn't go too hard, because I think the jury may look at it as she's badgering this witness. So it's a fine line. She's going to have to do some cross-examination for sure. But Dylan Mortensen, I think she's going to tell the truth. This is what happened. We know the words that came out of her mouth that are going to be on police reports that were done the day of the incident. And that's what she's going to refer back to.
4-string mofo. Is there any video footage of BK returning at 9 a.m.? But I think what there is that
cell phone,
is cell tower information, because he turned his phone back on because he wasn't committing a quadruple murder at 9:00 in the morning. So whether there's any video footage of the white Hyundai Elantra at that hour, I don't know. Could the prosecution have that and be saving it for the right moment? Don't forget, there was a gag order for a long time during this case. Now things are just starting to spill out. And let's not forget, this is a death penalty case. So things are starting to occur quite slowly, and we will know a lot more in the next month or so leading up to this August trial. Guys, I'm going to go to Phil first. Phil, your final thoughts.
My final thoughts, just real quick to piggyback what you just said. I would think there would be video evidence, since there was video evidence at 4 a.m., 9:00. I think there's probably going to be that type of video evidence. Hasn't been revealed, but maybe there. With regard to all the evidence in this case, listen, there's certainly things that the defense is going to try and create doubt in the minds of the jurors. However, we talked about it numerous times. If you take all these little bits and pieces of circumstantial evidence, the DNA evidence, and there's probably things that we don't know about with regard to his search history and stuff like that, I would think it's going to be a very high hill for the defense to climb to get a not guilty verdict in this case. Even a hung jury, I think, is going to be difficult, but fingers crossed that everything goes well and we get justice for Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, and Xana Knodel, and God rest their souls, and just keep thoughts and prayers for their families. These kids were young, killed in the prime of their lives, and it's just really, really terrible.
Absolutely. Professor Mike, your final thoughts.
Bill, I agree with Phil, because I would love to see video in the daytime of that Hyundai driving through that neighborhood, and you marry the times that the timestamps of an image of that car driving through that area, that neighborhood, at exactly when the phone is pinging, and then you match it, and then you go back and you see and you show the jury the video of the car at around 4 a.m. That is real powerful, because what is he doing there? If he doesn't know those people, if he has no prior connection to them whatsoever, what is his reason for driving past that location, pinging on that cell tower? And if there's video, what are you doing there? Who do you know? Why are you there? Seems strange that you would be there at 9:00 in the morning. Just pray for their families. And I think everyone should have confidence in the police investigation. And as we get closer to the trial, we will hear more and more damning evidence against Bryan Kohberger.
100%. Folks, this is our show for this evening. Again, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit the like button. It really helps us hitting that algorithm. It gets more watches as the show is posted to YouTube. So, folks, again, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Bill Cannon on behalf of my friend Phil Grimaldi and Professor Mike. Thank you for tuning in, and God bless. Have a good night.
Stay safe, everyone.
One episode just ain't enough.